Hi, everybody. Good evening. Uh, my name is Lakshman. I've been working as a DevOps architect in. I currently live in Germany, and I support multiple clients for the DevOps implementation. So that's basically about myself. And I coming to my career. I mean, I really have started working into various domains, such as Oracle, PeopleSoft, and then I also have worked into this development, and then also basically started working into this operations and then DevOps. So this is basically how I have worked in my experience so far. And today we really would like to understand how this Azure DevOps really will fetch you guys to get into this IT market and then grab the opportunity to really start a good career. Yeah. And as I said, basically, so today it's a kind of basic demo that I would like to give you, that how really the DevOps is really originated, and then how that really fits into the software development lifecycle and so on. And I would also give you few more details with respect to the services which we are going to discuss as a part of our syllabus, and also Azure DevOps services. Okay, so let's give a start, and then yeah, so if you have any questions, you can for sure ask me at the end of the session. But till then, please be patient, and then I try to give you an opportunity for everybody for your questions. Yeah. So then let me quickly share my screen. And as I said, it could be really a basic demo, what you can understand in this demo, right? And yeah, so as I mentioned that we are actually going to start with an understanding of this software development lifecycle. But most of the time, really, we get annoyed to understand why we really need to discuss this software development lifecycle to understand DevOps. That's basically, there are lots of questions coming from the students, and then that we really have to understand why we really have to learn this software development lifecycle, or understand software development lifecycle, and then how this software development lifecycle fits into this DevOps. Okay, so as you can see my screen, this is basically how it looks like. If you can see the title, I have mentioned as DevOps as a SDLC. So what exactly it means, and we try to really understand with a real-time example, so that you will really get a clear picture that what exactly the software development lifecycle in reality, and then how this software development lifecycle really fits into this DevOps. That's most crucial part that we really have to understand before we really dive into this DevOps topic. Okay, so for that, what I would actually do it, I would quickly give you a real-time example. Okay, so what I would do it, I would really take a kind of a Paytm application. Okay, so as you guys can see, I mean, the reason that why I really took this Paytm application as an example, because this is known to everybody, so you can really understand what I'm talking about, so that you can actually get more clarity on that what we are actually talking about. Okay, so let's say this is basically a Paytm application that everybody what does lots of transactions. They do book the tickets, they do really do kind of investing plans. They also really do financial services in here. Okay, and also apart from this, Paytm also is having a kind of shopping flexibility. It means you can also do a kind of shopping. Okay, so this is something a bit about the Paytm, that how it works. Let us say what I'm actually going to give an example. Okay, as you can see here, One moment, please. So as you can see here, what I am basically going to do it. Let's say I am also a businessman that I want to start my own business. Okay. What is the kind of business it is? I want to start a kind of business which is similar to Paytm. Okay. So let's say it is called MyTM. For example, my business name is called MyTM. Okay. And then whenever I really want to start my business, what I have to do it, I want to make an online application, right? Because the way that Paytm is working, the Paytm is having its own application. The same way my business needs an application, an online application. So whenever I need a software application to be designed, what can really happen? Basically, the very first step, what can happen? I am going to approach a software company, okay? And I'm going to approach my any software company, and I will explain my business requirement and my business, how that really works. Okay, so then the software company, basically the persons who really understand my business, and then they try to basically, start implementing it. Before that, what can happen? Whenever I explain my nature of the business, what can happen? The software company will really ask few questions, right? So that is pretty much important for anybody, because when I explain my business, they may not be able to understand what exactly I need to have in my business application, right? The same way, what software people basically will do it, a software company will do it, they will really start gathering all the requirements from the customer. So now I'm the customer to a software company, and in the first step, what they're actually going to do it, they are going to gather the requirements from customer. Okay, so that's basically called very first step, which happens between a software company and also between a customer. And then what these requirements are actually called? These requirements are basically called what kind of features I need, what kind of flexibility I want to give it to my consumers. For example, if I actually open a kind of example here, so the same way how this application looks like, I also want to provide a kind of payments to be done via my application. Okay, my consumer should be able to do some recharges. They should be able to send money to anybody. They should also be doing kind of online payments to anybody. They should also doing, this in-store payments and so on. Apart from this, they should also be basically doing the ticket booking for movie tickets, flight tickets, train tickets, and so on. Okay. So for example, if I basically get into these movie tickets, and there would be again lots of options actually are coming in, and then I can simply select this, and these are all different really the requirements, how the business application should work even for me. Okay, so the same way what I would do it, I also basically give all my requirements and my business plans to really make the software company or software people to understand how exactly my business looks like. Okay, and then the next step, what can happen once they actually gather all the requirements? Okay, what they're actually going to do it in the next step, they're basically going to plan how they have to really understand these requirements, and they will also basically plan how these requirements really should be put into kind of understandable documentation. Okay, because they have to plan, I mean, they really have to gather right requirements. They have to put all of them in a proper documentation, so that the software people who really want to implement the software, they should be able to understand it. So that's the reason why in the second step, what really happens, the planning is actually happening in the second step. Okay, and in the third step, what is basically going to happen? they are actually going to analyze the software requirements, what are actually gathered. What exactly it means, whenever the requirements are gathered from the customer. Okay, so sometimes what can happen, sometimes even there are some requirements missed because customer cannot give you all the requirements, right? So who is responsible, whose responsibility is to really find any missed requirements? That is the software people who are really actually gathering all the requirements. So what they do, they really do the analysis on the requirements which are actually gathered, and they try to find out if there are any requirements are missed, if there are requirements any additionally needed, if there are any requirements not really needed. Okay, this is all kind of these all kind of requirements analysis can happen in the third step called analyze. Okay, which is also called analysis. Once this analysis is basically done, what does it mean? They really have gathered all the requirements. They also identify really the required requirements. Then they will start really designing the requirements which are actually gathered. What exactly the design basically phase is all about? What exactly it is? So for example, let me give you an example for a real-time scenario. When you really want to construct your home, okay, what do? You basically approach to a civil engineer, then he will really start constructing all the kind of designs for you, how the house should look like at the end of the construction. Then he will give a design, right? Why do we need design? Because we need to understand how our house will look like at the end of the construction. The same way, whatever the requirements which are gathered, analyzed, that should be really built as a design. That should have a proper architecture to be designed so that the people, the software developers who really are going to implement, they are really understanding that how really the software should look like in terms of the design. Okay, that is the reason why design is basically a crucial part that really everybody has to understand, and also everybody has to really look at the design and then go on for the implementation. And then the next step, once the design is basically completed, what they're actually going to do it, they are going to code it. Okay, so they are going to code it in the sense they are going to implement the software. Okay, so you do not need to worry about it. So let's say they are actually implementing a software in Java. They are basically implementing in .NET. They are actually implementing in maybe Python. It does not matter. Okay, so once the design is complete, there will be a lot of discussions basically happen. And once those discussions are really complete, then they are actually going to design which programming language should be used. And then once the programming language is really decided, and the software developers are actually going to implement the code for the software. So that's basically the fifth stage, how basically in reality it works. And let's say once the code is completed, it means once the software is basically implemented, then the next step, what can happen? The next step basically should happen is basically called testing. And let us try to understand why do we really need a testing? Because let's say a developer writes the code, but do you really think whatever the code which is really written or implemented, does it really work? Without you testing, you cannot ensure that your software is really working. So always, right? So let's say if something you have implemented, if others do not test it, then you are not sure, you are not confident that your product, your implementation will really work. So for that, what is actually going to happen in the next phase is basically called a testing. A rigorous testing basically will happen before that is actually release it to the customer. So let's say you did not do the testing of your code. You did not do the testing of your implementation of the software. Then you have released the software to the customer, but if that is not working, then that's a problem. Okay. So that is the reason why after you code it, after the implementation is done, then testing is really a crucial phase where, that should be a part of this software development lifecycle. Okay. And the next stage is basically called releasing it to the customer. So releasing it to the customer can also be called as a maintenance. Okay. So this is also called as maintenance. So it means after doing all these phases, you really have released your product to the customer. Okay. So it means this is how in reality that how the software designing basically take place and releasing it to the customer. Okay. Now there is basically a problem in here. What is the problem? I try to explain you that. Okay. The problem is, if you can look at this application, for example, you can see how many features are really there. You can take the loan, you can take the education loan, you can pay for the broadband and landline. You can also do recharges. You can also payment. You can also do the payment to the electricity and so on. There are many basically, right? So just let me ask you one thing. Okay. The only question I would like to ask, if I am a customer that I would like to start a business, okay, but can I give you all these requirements at once? It means whatever you see here, there are n number of really features implemented in this particular application. So it means if the customer knows all these requirements at once, then the software developers really implement everything. But do you think really the customer knows all these features at once? Really, that is not possible, because when you want to start your business, when you really want your own software to be implemented, you do not know all the features at once. In the same way, you do not know how technology really changes in future. You basically imagine few futures now. For example, let's say I want to start my business, let's say with doing some payments. What? Initially, how do I want to start? I want to start my business doing some payments. Okay. Then I will give you all the requirements related to these payments. Okay. Now let us basically go into that kind of scenario. So now, if you can see, very first feature that what I'm actually going to start my business, I'm going to start my business with a feature called payments. Okay. And in order to support my consumers, my customers, to do the payment with my online business, then all these payment related requirements will be given to the software company. And then they will actually plan it. They will again do the analysis. They will again do design. They will again basically code it. They will test it and they will release it. So in the first place, in my website, for example, now let's say it is my TM. Okay. It is my website. Initially, what is my application, my TM, and initially I have my website basically started with doing payments. And the consumers, okay, they basically customers will access my website and they will start really doing the payments from my website. Then out of it, what I can get, I will get some business, right? So I will get some business. Then what do I want to do it now? I want to expand my business. Okay. So I want to introduce even booking the tickets in my website, right? Then what is the next step? I want to start with the booking tickets, right? So then I would basically introduce this booking and I will give all the requirements again to the software company. And with respect to this booking, Okay, so you can see how many features are there under this booking. You can see how many features are there. I want to give the flexibility for my customers to book the movie tickets, to book the flight tickets, to book the bus, and to book the train tickets, and so on, right? So then these booking requirements are actually given to the, again, a software company. Then again, they will actually do the planning. And again, they will analyze all these requirements with respect to booking. Again, they will actually do the design. Again, they will start implementing this. And again, they will actually test, and then they will release the customer. Now, what exactly this website again has? So this website, my website again has got what? Booking. Then my users got increased now. My users what? My users got increased because the users who want to book the tickets, they can also come to my online application. They can also use my booking service from my website. Okay, so now this basically this continuous process really goes on until until all the features are complete. So if you can look at the real application here, there are n number of features really are available. So it means, let us assume that how many times this whole process has actually happened. The whole process: gathering requirements, planning, analyzing, designing, coding, testing, and releasing, right? So if you imagine this life cycle, this cycle basically continuously happening, because always the customer gets new requirements, and they will be given to the software company, and then they actually do analyze all the they do analyze all the requirements, and analyze and design code, testing, and releasing it to the customer. In this process, the whole application is really designed. But if you ask me, is this complete? No, it is not complete, because maybe in my business I want to introduce a few more services also. Then it is not complete. So this cycle is continuously happening, right? Now the problem is, I said I'm basically doing all this stuff. I'm again coding it, testing it, releasing it to the customer, and so on, right? So let's say if this cycle happens manually, if we have to do this cycle, if you have to do the life cycle manually, then how much hectic job for us? Can you understand? If we have to do it manually, in an iterative fashion, then how much time really takes? It takes really a lot of time for you to really design the software and deliver it to the customer. So in order to automate this process, okay, there is a basically called DevOps process is involved. Okay, so DevOps can be basically called as a methodology. DevOps can be called as a process, a best practices. DevOps basically can be also called as a kind of a development life cycle is automated. Okay, so then in order to really automate this whole iteration, you are actually going to use this DevOps. So it means if you are using this DevOps topic, so this, in order to implement this DevOps, you have really few DevOps tools. Okay, so now if I actually come back to my presentation, you can see how this presentation now looks like. So I have given a software development lifecycle on the left side. You can see in the first stage, it is a planning. It means they gather the requirements from the customer, and they do the analysis, and they do the design. Once the design is complete, they will actually start doing the coding. It means the implementation, and then they will do the testing. And once the testing is complete, and that product is basically released to the customer. That is the reason why you can see it is a maintenance. Okay, so when you look at the right side now, okay, you can see it is named as CI/CD, but we don't know what the CI/CD as of now. But let's see. So what exactly it contains? You are planning here, and you are actually coding here. You are basically building here. You are actually doing a testing, and you are releasing it to the customer. Okay, so let's say deploy, operate, and you may not be able you may not be able to understand, but this process is basically called maintenance, the stage 6, and this process is basically called from stage 1 to the 5. Okay, so this starting from planning, coding, building, testing is actually called continuous integration. Okay, always whenever say the continuous integration, whatever you are actually doing as a SDLC, then you are actually having a planning, coding, building, testing. This basically a iteration is called as continuous integration. And then once the continuous integration is basically done, you are basically delivering the product to the customer. So that is actually called a continuous delivery, because your implementation of the software is done, then you are delivering the product to the customer. Now, why it is called as continuous delivery? Because as I mentioned, if you can look at this, how many features are implemented? Paytm, payments first, booking, and thereafter they will start doing investments. They will also start doing the financial services. They will also start basically implementing some shopping and so on. It means it is continuously happening. The software implementation is continuously happening and delivering the product to the customer, right? That is the reason why you actually can see this is called a continuous delivery. And also this is called a continuous integration. It means this iteration continuously happening. So that is the reason why this is actually called a continuous integration and continuous delivery. But if you can look at DevOps as a SDLC, why did I name it as DevOps SDLC? Because that is what we are implementing using DevOps, right? So in using DevOps, what you are implementing, you are automating the software development lifecycle process to make your life easier. So by this, what you can achieve are delivering the product to the end user, to the customer, okay, in a defined timeline. So then customer will be happy, and also we will be happy. Okay, so this is basically why this DevOps basically fits into the software development lifecycle. So it means you need to understand what exactly happens in software development lifecycle. Then you actually can see how the software development lifecycle will fit into the DevOps. Okay, and then going to the next slide. You can see, I mean, there are n number of tools really available in order to implement the DevOps. So now, from now onwards, whenever I say DevOps, you can basically always refer a continuous integration and continuous delivery. Okay, so it means in order to implement your CI/CD or DevOps, then there are really lots of open source tools available. Okay, so it means why we really need this many of tools and what exactly these open source tools are all about. Okay, so I can quickly categorize these tools into two. Okay, so for example, if you can look at there are really two tools available. Okay, one is that open source tools, and second one is that you can basically call enterprise tools. Okay, so it means whatever the tools you can actually use it for free of cost, they are basically called open source tools. Okay, it means you can basically download it from the internet, and then you can basically make use them. And whatever the tools you actually take it from the enterprise companies, it means you buy those tools from a company, and then you will start implementing the DevOps. So it means you really have to purchase these tools, and you have to pay money for as per the purchase plans you have. So these are basically there are two tools which are really available. Okay, but sometimes what really confuses us. Okay, so let's say I will name a kind of a tool called Jenkins. Okay, I don't want to discuss what exactly the Jenkins and everything now, but I try to give you an example for a kind of use case. So this is one of the open source tools which are really available. Okay, so it means, as I mentioned, you can basically download the open source tools for free of cost, and then you can basically implement a CI/CD. But you also have the Jenkins as enterprise edition tool. Why? So what exactly it means? For example, let's say I'm the person. Okay, I have a company called uh, Naya Company. Okay, so it's basically called Naya Company. And then what do? I will basically download this tool for free of cost. And my company is a software company. Then after downloading Jenkins for free of cost, I will add more features into this Jenkins. What do? I will add more features into the existing tool. Then after adding the features into this tool, I will basically sell it to the customers. So let's say there is a customer called uh, Infi company. Okay, so Infi company is a customer. He basically purchased this Jenkins tool from my company. But what do they get? They basically get the Jenkins with additional features. That's a one thing. Okay, what do they get? They do get some additional features which are not available in the open source tools, for example. And they also get called support. Okay, it means what exactly it means. For example, let's say you have started using the enterprise Jenkins tool. All of a sudden there is a problem. There is a problem occurred in your tool. Then you basically purchased the tool from Naya company, and you will approach the company that there is a problem with this tool, please support us. So then they will try to resolve your issue. But if you basically download a free software, and then you start implementing this tool in your company in order to implement, let's say, CI/CD, then what can happen? If there is any issue, then no support will be given. So you have to fix the issues, you have to fix the issues yourself. And also you have to wait for a long time to really to get that issue fixed. So this is the reason why you basically, there are two kinds of tools available. One is the kind of open source tools and enterprise tools. Okay, so when you look at this presentation here, there are really n number of open source tools available for this DevOps to implement. So now if I basically say Git basically can be used for free of cost. You can use this Git in your DevOps implementation. You can basically use Jenkins for free of cost, and also you can get the purchase license. You can also get the Docker. You can also get the Kubernetes. You can also get Maven and so on. So there are really lots of tools available in the market. But why do we really need to learn this cloud DevOps? That is the point, right? As I mentioned, if there are really tools available for free of cost, why do we really need to learn this cloud DevOps? That is a point that we really have to understand. Okay, so now let us try to understand that point here. So when you have your company, okay, so for example, just let me open a new one. So whenever you have your company, okay, so let's say this is Infosys, okay, and in the Infosys they want to really implement a project, okay, DevOps project. So when they want to implement the project, what they decided, let's say they have decided some tools to use. For example, Jenkins to implement CI/CD. Okay. You may not be aware what is a CI/CD, but you do not need to be worried about it. We will discuss this in depth. Okay. And then you have, let's say you have actually downloaded a Maven tool. You have downloaded a Docker. You have downloaded, let's say, Nexus. You have downloaded, let's say, Kubernetes, and so on. Okay. So now, once you downloaded all these tools, okay, so what do you have to do it? You have to start implementing the DevOps. Okay. So for that, what do you need to do? You need to take a VM, which is called a virtual machine or the laptop or the workstation, whatever you call. Okay. So this is a VM. You have installed Jenkins in this. Okay. You have installed Jenkins. So since you have installed this Jenkins, this VM is called as Jenkins server. And you have installed again a Docker. Okay. So since you have installed Docker in this VM, this is called a Docker server. So you have installed a tool called Nexus. So since you have installed this tool in your VM3, this is called a Nexus server. Okay, you have installed a Kubernetes, which is also called KTS. So in a separate VM, so that is basically called a Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so for example, let's say, what is the problem here? So you have basically downloaded all the required tools, and then you have configured all the tools in order to implement the DevOps. But let's say you are using them. So let's say you have configured all these tools now. So it means in order to manage these VMs, tools, in order to manage this Nexus, Kubernetes, in order to manage Docker, Jenkins, and everything, you need to have the resources, right? What do you need? You need to have the resources. It means you have to recruit few people in order to manage these servers. Okay, you have to recruit the new resources to manage these servers. And also, if there is any issue with this particular tool, then what do you have to do? You have to fix these issues yourself. If there is any issue with this Docker, you have to fix this issue. If there is any issue with this VM, you have to fix this issue. If there is any problem with the Nexus tool or this VM, you need to fix this issue, right? It means it has become a headache for you guys to manage all these resources. Okay, now what the cloud people will say, okay, it could be AWS, it could be Microsoft Azure, it could be even Google, right? So it means what these cloud people will say, guys, so you do not need to install the tool separately and manage. I will give them DevOps as services. What? DevOps as services. It means whatever the tools you need, you get all the tools in the DevOps as a services. And also, what is the benefit? So the first benefit is DevOps as service. It means they get all the tools what they really needed. The second benefit is that they can pay as go. It means, for example, let's say the company is using the DevOps. They have stopped using it. Then they do not need to pay. Okay, so but let's say in this example, though they are not using these servers, though they are not using these tools, the resources are really wasted. The resources which are there basically to maintain these servers are really wasted. But in this case, what can happen? If you use this service from the cloud, then you pay. If you don't use it, don't pay, which is really quite flexible for any company to adopt the cloud services rather than downloading individual tools and using them. Really is a hectic job for anybody. Okay, so this is the reason why everybody is actually going towards the cloud services rather than just using the individual tools and configuring them in their organizations. So now there is a point again that we really have to discuss, why we have to learn this Microsoft Azure DevOps. So as I mentioned, AWS has AWS DevOps, Azure has Azure DevOps, Google has a Google implementation for the DevOps. So it means you can use the services using some tools. You can also implement, you can also use the Google Cloud to integrating with some other tools to implement this DevOps, for example. Okay, but mainly I was only talking about this Microsoft Azure DevOps. So Microsoft Azure DevOps is actually why it is pretty much famous in the DevOps area, because Microsoft is pretty much in the market so many years, right? So let's compare, I mean, logically compare who is in the market, and Microsoft is really in the market. Who is having more customers since lots of years? Microsoft is really having lots of customers. So it means who can really attract more customers in future also? Microsoft can attract. So it means that is the reason why. And also there is one more point, and Microsoft is a bit cheaper than other clouds. So this is the reason why the Microsoft is really pretty much in demand for the Azure and also for Azure DevOps services. Okay, so this is the thing that why we really have to learn this Azure DevOps. And coming to the point, what exactly we are going to learn in this Azure DevOps. You can see in the Azure DevOps, you can learn there are pretty much services listed here. So you can see Azure Repo. This is one of the services where the code is really placed. So we will learn this Azure Repo as a part of this Azure DevOps. And also the pipelines. So the pipelines are basically used in order to implement the CI/CD. So it means these pipelines are pretty much easy to learn, and these are standard. You can basically learn it with really basic understanding. And then the boards, and the boards are basically used to plan your requirements. That is what we discussed in the software development lifecycle. You really have to plan the boards. You really have to plan the requirements. That is basically the boards which you can use. And then artifacts. Artifacts are basically the storage location where you keep the binaries of the project, but you may not be able to understand what exactly the binary at this moment. But these binary we will discuss in deep, and we will try to understand in further classes, but those binaries can be stored in an artifacts. And then there are also many tools which are really available, can be integrated with the Azure DevOps. So these are actually collaborated tools, and we will also discuss the tools which we really need in order to implement the DevOps. So these test plans can be used really to test the product. Okay, so this test plans basically is an integrated service which can be given by the Azure DevOps. Okay, and then coming to the syllabus, so you can basically see the syllabus in here. So I can quickly share the syllabus. So just give me a moment. Yeah, not the one. So signing and one moment, guys, and just yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you can see, this is the syllabus that we are basically going to discuss. We are going to discuss the basic introduction, starting with SDLC that we discussed today. And we also try to understand few more required topics to really get into this DevOps. And once we understand that, we are actually going with the version controlling systems. So this is something that the version controlling system topics that we are going to discuss. And then once we complete with that, we have to understand these build tools, and we will also understand Maven build tool and also the .NET tool to really understand how this build process really take place. But you may not be aware what exactly the build process now, but I try to really give you the basic, the understanding. And also you can see this Azure DevOps repo. So the Azure DevOps repo will be also understood as a part of this syllabus, and also the Sonar Cube. We have to really maintain the quality for the code. So we will try to understand how this can be implemented. The Sonar Cube can be implemented and integrated into our DevOps. And also introduction to different continuous integration tools. So once we complete that, we really get into this Azure pipelines, and these Azure pipelines will be basically used in order to implement our CI/CD. So Azure DevOps Artifact is basically a place where we store our binaries. It means it's a storage location. We will see that in practical how these artifacts can also be used. And Azure DevOps CI/CD, once you learn these Azure pipelines, then you really can start implementing the continuous integration and delivery. So once we complete with that, and we also learn this Docker, and Docker is pretty much used and it's pretty much famous in for the developers and also for the DevOps engineers. So we will also understand this Docker. And once we complete that, we will also understand this Azure, because Azure, we have to understand few services from the Azure. So we will basically understand and discuss these Azure topics also as a part of this syllabus. So once we go through this Azure, and we can also learn this Terraform for Azure especially, and also the ARM templates, which are actually specific to the Azure. So we will also discuss these tools. And then Azure Kubernetes Service. So we will understand how Azure Kubernetes Service really works. So this is something that what we are actually going to discuss. So these are all the topics which we are actually going to discuss as a part of the syllabus. So this basically syllabus will take from 45 days to 60 days, and maybe more than that, based on the time taking or maybe understanding of the students and so on. But yeah, this is basically in nutshell, this is all about. And this course really costs you 16,000, and also we are going to have two more free demos, and you can attend them, and then thereafter you can actually enroll. You can start doing enrollments. So this is something that what we are actually going to have in it. Okay, so now I can quickly give you the time for the questions. You can ask me the questions now. If can you be able to unmute yourself? Can somebody try unmuting themselves and then speak? Hello? Hello? Are you able to hear me? Hello? 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 Hello?
Hello.
Hello. Hello. This is Santosh. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, Lakshmanji, you were audible. So actually, this speaking mode was restricted for some time.
Sir, sir, are you there?
Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello?
चाय पिलाए बोल दो ना
Sir?